I am Jungle Ung, and my buddy is Wedgie Lee. We're both soldiers in training in the Special Service Unit. In case you haven't realized, our nicknames are obviously cheeky terms of endearment we call each other, not our actual names. It's just one of the stupid things we do in the military. We grew up together in the same orphanage, and joining the military seemed like the next natural step in life when we turned 16. Where we were from, our military pays well. We never went to university. Studying was never our strong suit, and instead started working for the military last year. We finished the normal basic training that all military folk go to, and we then got posted to the Special Service Unit. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a Special Forces unit where people train hard to combat terrorism and fight wars and do all the usual military stuff you hear about in the news. In this unit, we train to fight the supernatural, ghosts, ghouls, everything weird and paranormal. We are now a couple months into our supernatural training. We do follow a few rules here, military ones, not the supernatural ones you usually see on r/NOSLEEP. At least, I don't think so. They seem relatively harmless to us. Instructor Ryan had read these rules to us on the first day here. 1. You train in pairs. You will share a room with your buddy. Anything that happens to you also happens to your buddy. Anything that applies to you also applies to your buddy. You will eat together, train together, and if either one of you slip up, you get punished together. 2. You are provided a set of trucks, some socks, and a pair of shoes for your training. For water-based training activities, you will also have a set of goggles. You will wear nothing else for the whole duration of the training program. 3. You only have one instructor for the whole duration of your training. Your instructor is Instructor Ryan. You must always follow your instructor's commands, except when it contradicts previous rules. Your training will be for as long as you and your buddy need. You will graduate together when you are deemed ready. Other than this, Instructor Ryan had told us, every stupid question you ask gets you 10 push-ups. Everything except for Rule 2 had sounded normal, so Wedgie had asked Instructor Ryan about it. It's for you to be more in tune with your environment. What a stupid question. That would be 10 push-ups. Push! Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. Some introductions are in order. The first question they asked us in the military was, why did we join? For Wedgie and I, the answer is simple. We hope to find a family here. We were told that most people in the Special Service Unit come from orphanages. Maybe it's because so many supernatural things happen around these places. They're haunted after all. Wedgie and I, we've come across a few supernatural ourselves, back when we were in the orphanage. The staff in the orphanage were all creepy by human standards. Some actually were supernatural. Honestly though, looking back, we couldn't really tell who was human and who wasn't at the time. Besides, to be fair to the supernatural caregivers, the worst frights you'd probably get from those caregivers were from their looks. Other than their frightful appearances, the caregivers seemed pretty normal to me. Yeah, a vampire or ghost floating around the corridors at night might sound scary, but they were there to keep children in their beds, and you couldn't be in the corridors anyways. Some of them were genuinely nice too, like Mr. Vampy, a vampire who is the caregiver in our ward. Obviously that isn't his real name, just what he asked us to address him as. He would sit outside in the garden with us on cooler days, when the sky was overcast and there was no sunshine. He's a vampire after all. Tell us stories about centuries past. When the sun shone, he would sit in the shade with an umbrella, watching us play in the fields beyond the orphanage, making sure we didn't hurt each other or ourselves, and he would be sure to tuck us in every night. He was as much of a parent as we could ask for, and yet the supernatural weren't even the ones we were afraid of. That unique honor was reserved for the big boss of the orphanage, whom was called Chief. Unlike the supernatural caregivers, whose inhuman features were the most frightening thing about them, Chief's presence intimidated everyone in the orphanage. Sure, Chief was definitely human, but everyone was afraid of him. It wasn't just us. Chief often terrified the other caregivers in the orphanage. Children ran when he stalked down the corridor in his dark blue blazer, afraid to cross him. You see, children who caused too much trouble would be sent away from the orphanage and thrown out on the street. They were left to fend for themselves. That's exactly what happened to Naira, the most mischievous girl in our orphanage who loved pranking people. Wedgie and I still remember her, because she was the first child to be removed from the orphanage. Her pranks never did any harm, and while the pranks occasionally annoyed our caregivers, they usually let it go. As I said, our caregivers were really nice. But as the Chinese saying goes, go up the mountain enough times and you'll eventually meet a tiger. On that fateful day, Naira had left a large soap puddle, intended for one of the teachers. Judging by the timetable, it could have been for Miss Skelly, a clumsy skeleton who never seemed to look where she was walking. But instead of Miss Skelly, Chief walked down the corridor just before the start of the next period, when Miss Skelly was due to come through. Everyone knew what was going to happen before it did. We all looked on in horror as Chief slipped, crashing down to the floor in an enormous heap. He lay there for a long while before he picked himself up. "Who did this?" Chief had asked, in a dangerously quiet and calm tone. We all knew it was a rhetorical question. Chief always knew exactly who did what in the orphanage, but he seemed to like to ask anyway. Naira raised her hand timidly. "Get out," Chief said. He stood up and dusted his blazer and pants casually, but underneath his calm demeanor lay a sea of rage. He walked towards Naira and pulled her by the ear, dragging her out of the orphanage's doors. Naira pleaded for Chief to let her go, but he ignored her cries of forgiveness. When Chief returned, he was alone. We never heard from Naira again, and nobody has dared to cross Chief's scent. Sure, there were rumors about Naira. Some said that Naira became a monster herself. Some even went as far as to side with Chief. They said Naira's pranks would only grow, that she was always a monster in the making. They said that Chief's actions were the only way to protect the other children, and even caregivers in the orphanage. But nobody actually knew. After Naira was taken away, Mr. Vampy sat down with us to make sure we were all okay. Some of us cried, despite Chief's reputation for being a cruel man. Naira was our first friend that was kicked out of the orphanage by Chief. Yeah, some humans are scarier than monsters, I guess. Part 2. Yes, sir. Wedgie and I are facing the ground again as Instructor Ryan paces around our room, shouting at us for not keeping our room neat. Not neat enough by his standards anyway. "How many do you think you owe me?" Instructor Ryan bends down next to us, shouting next to our heads. 10, sir. We responded loudly in unison. The usual punishment. Push! We knocked out 10 push-ups, counting out loud as we do so. We stay in position when we finish. Recover, Instructor Ryan shouts. Yes, sir! We stand up quickly, shuffling back into position, waiting for Instructor Ryan to finish inspecting our room. Welcome to your daily life. It's an endless cycle of workouts, sprinkled with a good dose of calisthenics. We don't study, we don't train with weapons, we just exercise. Your body is your best weapon, Instructor Ryan says. You need to become in tune with your body. What does that even mean? Have you ever seen anybody else about? Wedgie asked me early one evening, as we lounged about our bunk. Don't you find that weird? I know what he means. Other than Instructor Ryan, we had not seen a single other soul since we came here. When we sweated out on the jogging track in the hot afternoon sun in our swimming trunks and running shoes, we are alone. When we swim laps in the pool, we're alone. Even when we go into the kitchen, we're alone. Sure, our trays of food are always there, with some potatoes and rice, or pasta, but nothing else is in sight. The camp is deserted. We are alone, apart from Instructor Ryan, of course. Your body is your best weapon. You need to become in tune with your body, he always says, as we lie on the ground panting after the latest session of exercises. Our sunburnt bodies streaked with dirt and covered in sweat. At least we're starting to get into good shape now. Wedgie has always been scrawny, and I've always been pudgy, but we've since grown into fine young men and rather nice looking physiques. Not gonna lie, sometimes I catch myself looking longer in the mirror at the end of the day. Maybe that's how narcissistic I felt, I think. Well, I don't know what the guy is up to, but I've learned to stop asking him questions long ago. We practically do push-ups each time we ask a question, so I'm keeping my mouth shut, and so should you. I slap Wedgie on the back, laughing. Wedgie is the main source of stupid questions, but in line with Rule 1, we always get to do push-ups together. Nice. Wedgie punches me back in the arm. Becoming in tune with our bodies? Utter crap, he laughs. The door opens and Instructor Ryan is there. Damn, I think as we come to attention, did he overhear us? But if he did, Instructor Ryan gives no indication. He remains passive, expressionless, much unlike the screaming, shouting instructor during our trainings. Come with me, he says. It is time. Time for what? But of course, we know better than to ask. We wordlessly follow Instructor Ryan, trudging down the corridor to the swimming pool. The full moon is in the sky, and we see its reflection in the water. Instructor Ryan turns to Wedgie. Take off everything and jump, he says, pointing to the pool. Wedgie immediately starts stripping off his trunks, socks, and shoes. He knows better than to hesitate or worse, ask questions. I catch a glimpse of his face even as I stare ahead facing the pool. As is typical in the military, Wedgie's face is full of unasked questions, but he manages to keep his mouth shut as he leaps into the pool. Instead of keeping afloat, like we always do, Wedgie sinks like a rock. He does not resurface. The next few minutes feel like years. Instructor Ryan's face remains impassive. Permission to rescue Wedgie, sir? I cried out. Very well, Rule 1. Do the same, then go after him. Instructor Ryan's voice is cold and distant. Do the same? I ask before I catch myself, but Instructor Ryan just looks at me in silence. Then it strikes me. Rule 1. Anything that happens to you also happens to your buddy. Anything that applies to you, applies to your buddy. I strip off hurriedly and leap into the pool, looking for Wedgie. I see him lying at the bottom of the pool where he sank. His eyes are peacefully closed. I curse, taking a huge breath and dive, linking my arms around his, swimming upwards and pulling. But he is stuck. A force is holding him to the bottom of the pool. Come on, I think, placing one hand against the bottom of the pool and the other against his body in an effort to lift him. He didn't budge, and now neither does my hand. I am now struggling to free myself. Is this the end? I think, as the last bubbles of air escape my lungs. All of those years in the orphanage that we spent together, all of those months spent training in the army, this is my buddy whom I grew up with. No, Wedgie is more than a buddy. He is my brother. He is family. In a last-ditch effort, I scoop my hand under Wedgie's body, holding him tightly to mine as I pull with all my remaining strength. Just as my vision began to fade, Wedgie suddenly comes free, and we are carried by an invisible force to the pool surface. We landed on the pool deck, at Instructor Ryan's feet. We tumble apart from each other. Lying on the deck, stunned, gulping huge lungfuls of air, I look at Wedgie to see him glowing. What? I look down at myself. Well, so am I. A thin golden thread runs through our bare chests, linking us to each other. Instructor Ryan smiles. Congratulations, gentlemen. You are now in tune with your bodies. You're ready for the next stage of our training. Part 3. After the last incident, Instructor Ryan gave us a reprieve. The next day, he gave us a day off of training. He even sat down with us in the afternoon and said, "Ask all you want for an hour. There are no stupid questions. You guys deserve that much at least. Starting from now, go." Not that he was forthcoming with the answers. We asked dozens of questions like, what happened to us? What do you mean we're in tune with our bodies? As I'm sure you know, something has happened. You'll find out in the next few weeks of your training. Where's everyone else? What everyone else? Yeah, like I said, the guy isn't really the most forthcoming source of information out there. The main transformation in us though, Wedgie and I figured, was that we could now feel what the other feels. Actually, we found that out the hard way. A few nights after the incident, Wedgie rubbed some mint toothpaste on my armpits and nipples while I was asleep. This prank probably won't surprise those from the military. The next day, we both woke up howling in pain. Yes, including Wedgie. Rule 1 brought to a whole new level. We both couldn't stand still when we came to attention, and were rewarded with plenty of push-ups from Instructor Ryan each time one of us tried to squirm. I swear the guy was smirking throughout our ordeal. Wait a moment, what's the advantage to this? Being in tune with your bodies, doesn't it make you more vulnerable? We realized that our bond gave us vastly increased stamina. It didn't come from our training, rather we got better overnight. Where Wedgie and I could only run 1.5 miles in about 10 minutes, we could now sprint the whole duration. We were also much stronger now, being able to perform superhuman feats of strength and speed. We also learned to control our link between us. I shouldn't go into the details, but let's just say we found out after playing plenty of pranks on each other. Lest you think Instructor Ryan has been nicer to us after the incident, Let me assure you, that is not the case. He's still brutal as ever, torturing us with workout after workout. Sometimes it's almost as if he enjoys seeing us suffer. Gentlemen, he tells us one morning after breakfast, we are going for some cold training. Wedgie and I exchange looks, wondering what that entails. We follow Instructor Ryan to a room, the ice room, the door had read. He opens the door and a cold blast hits us, dressed only in our training attire, our swim trunks and training shoes. Wedgie and I shiver, instinctively hugging each other for warmth. Instructor Ryan hardly flinches, even though he, like us, is bare-chested and only wearing trunks and training shoes. The man is tough, I'll give him that. The ice room is a huge cavern, much larger than what the door indicates. As large as a gymnasium, the ice room is covered in powdered snow, formed from the snowflakes that continuously drift down from the ceiling. Wedgie and I look around in amazement. We don't see snow much in our country, and we've never traveled outside of the military, so this was a first. Instructor Ryan wastes no time bringing us to a wrestling platform in the center of the room. Welcome, he says, ignoring our chattering teeth and shivering bodies, even as ice starts forming on his upper body. It doesn't seem to faze him in the least. Today, we shall learn how to fight, you two against me. Two of us against one of him? Wedgie and I exchange glances. Something must be up. What's the catch? We wondered silently. Two of us against one of him? In our current form? We've been enhanced after all. The rules are simple, Instructor Ryan continues. You will both fight me at once. You win when you throw me out of the ring. I win when I throw either of you out of the ring. Let's begin. Instructor Ryan places his feet apart and beckons with his hands. We let out a yell and charge at Instructor Ryan. He moves much faster than what should humanly be possible. He sidesteps Wedgie's attack and then swipes my leg out from underneath me. I land face first onto a heap of powdered snow on the north end of the wrestling ring, and my senses tell me that Wedgie has two. But on the opposite side, I clamber to my feet, looking for another chance to attack Instructor Ryan, but he's gone. Instead, I see two Wedgies standing in front of me. Then it hit me. Damn, Instructor Ryan is a shapeshifter. He isn't human. I guess I should have seen this coming after all this time, but neither Wedgie or I did. What the hell? One Wedgie said, leaping to attack the other. Wedgie vs. Ryan Wedgie. Ryan Wedgie effortlessly sidesteps Wedgie's attack again. As Wedgie overshoots his target, Ryan grows a dark tendril out of his back, wrapping itself around Wedgie's leg. Ryan flings Wedgie into the air, and I watch my brother sail out of the ring, where he lands on a pile of snow. Looks like you lose. Ryan turns back towards me with a sadistic grin, transforming back into Instructor Ryan. Damn, I was outmatched. I turn to run to the far end of the ring, but I am too slow. I feel a tendril wrap itself around my left leg, pulling it so that I lose my balance and tumble to the floor. Mercy, sir. I held up my hands, pleading as Instructor Ryan pulled me towards him with a grin. Sir, we surrender. Sir. But Instructor Ryan has no mercy. Instructor Ryan grows another tendril from his back, looking a lot like Doc Ock from Spider-Man, as he drags me towards him. One of the two tendrils wraps around my arms and legs, contorting them into painful positions. I try to scream, both in fear and pain, but the other tendril wraps around my chest, squeezing it so tightly that no sound comes out. Instructor Ryan does the same to Wedgie, carrying him back into the ring. Instructor Ryan pulls our bound forearms towards him, holding our bodies tightly against his. He puts his mouth so close to our ears that I feel his breath against my cheek. Wedgie can too. I can feel it through our link. We'll be training here weekly until you beat me, so you two had best improve fast, or else I'll wipe the floor with you. With that, he proceeded to literally wipe the platform with us, ignoring our cries and pleas for mercy. By the time we left the ice room, our bodies were covered with a coat of powdered ice. Wedgie and I hate cold training. Part 4. Instructor Ryan has been harder on us since cold training started. We have it weekly, every Friday. If you thought Fridays are the best day of the week because it comes before the weekend, let us assure you that we dread them. Cold training is always the first thing on Friday mornings, and we only have the weekend to recover before hell starts again. Granted, Wedgie and I have been improving rapidly. We've been training hard ourselves, just the two of us wrestling in the ice room on Monday evenings, supervised by Instructor Ryan, of course. Have you ever watched Pixar's Gary Game? It's about this man who plays chess against himself. Imagine that, but wrestling. It's actually quite hard wrestling someone who knows practically everything you intend to do. Neither Wedgie nor I have quite gotten the upper hand over each other. We each win about half of the time, usually through sheer luck. We try to conceal our intentions from each other, while also trying to read the other's intentions. But it's hard, especially while dealing with Instructor Ryan's pointers for improvements. With a healthy dose of physical punishment, of course. Wedgie tries kicking me with a flying kick, but misses. My return punch connects with Wedgie's waist, sending him flying backwards. "Stop," commands Instructor Ryan. "Wedgie, you're too aggressive. Jungle, you should aim to hit Wedgie here." He gestures to Wedgie's underarms. "And not here." He gestures slightly below towards Wedgie's waist. "Let me show you." Instructor Ryan roughly jabs Wedgie in the underarms, making him wince. Instructor Ryan then grabs him around his neck and throws him onto the ground. "You stay there, Jungle. Get into position." That's another 10 flutter kicks for both of you, for the inappropriate technique. I start to groan as I lay down on the icy ground. We raise our legs in the air and lower them repeatedly as we count the flutter kicks out loud. Good, now recover. Try to be more focused next time. We scramble to our feet and then take up a fighting stance. We spend at least half the training time doing flutter kicks and push-ups, and burpees and crunches, and all other sorts of exercises on the snow-covered ground of the ice room during these training sessions. The ice room may be cold, but the physical exertion makes us sweat. It mixes with the snow on the ground and freezes near instantaneously on our skin. It either forms these streaks of ice, or they form hard, icy drops. Both hurt. Instructor Ryan knows this, and in typical Ryan fashion, uses it to his advantage. He orders us to rotate through exercises too, just to make sure we roll around in the snow more. Like I said, cold training days suck. Welcome to another match of Instructor Ryan versus the Hapless Brothers. Instructor Ryan stretches his arms out as if there were a crowd of onlookers. With an aggressive yell, Wedgie leaps towards him. Ah, Always the aggressive one, sighs Instructor Ryan, catching Wedgie in midair with his arms and spinning him around. Instructor Ryan releases Wedgie and then plants his foot firmly on Wedgie's buttocks, sending him flying out of the wrestling ring. When we get our asses kicked, it's literal. Wedgie tumbles to the ground with a crash that stuns him more than it hurts him. "Your turn," Instructor Ryan loudly proclaims. "Are you ready to have your ass handed to you?" He winks at me. Not good. My heart is racing. I feel beads of perspiration trickling down my face and my back in anticipation. I crouch down, eyeing Instructor Ryan intently, trying to see what he'll do next. Instructor Ryan's skin stretches and ripples, transforming into an octopus again. He lashes a tentacle out at me, but I see the attack coming this time. I deftly sidestep it, leaping onto the rope fence that encloses the wrestling platform. "Hee-yah!" I yelled, jumping straight for Instructor Ryan's head. And then, I am falling through space, crashing straight to the ground. In that split second, while I was soaring through the air, Instructor Ryan had shapeshifted into a sparrow, fluttering away to safety. Instructor Ryan is in his Doc Ock form again. He's pinning me firmly to the ground. "You should have gone for the chest," he says, clearly referencing Thanos in Avengers Infinity War. "Game's over," he rumbles on ominously. "I hope you learnt your lesson." That can't be good. I shut my eyes, not wanting to see what Instructor Ryan did next. Then I saw it, or rather felt it, through the telepathic connection Wedgie and I shared. Wedgie soared through the air, landing on Instructor Ryan and temporarily pushing him off me. Instructor Ryan looked confused, then surprised. I thought I saw a triumphant grin flash through his face through my link with Wedgie, but Instructor Ryan's composure quickly turned serious once more. "That was good, Wedgie, but you're too late. You've lost, and this is going to hurt." Instructor Ryan extends a tendril, enveloping Wedgie and muffling his terrified cries. And then he picks me up off the ground, effortlessly. Instructor Ryan uses a tendril to hold each of our limbs, and begins threading our limbs around each other, painfully. Our desperate screams echo through the ice room as Instructor Ryan stretches our bodies to their limits. After what seems like an eternity, Instructor Ryan releases us and we crash to the ground. Wedgie and I are wrapped around each other so tightly, we are trapped in a ball with our arms weaved around each other. "Looks like you got your asses handed to you, boys," Instructor Ryan smirks, turns and walks away. Talk about sick burns, Instructor Ryan has no chill. We disentangled ourselves through an excruciating and humiliating process. Cold sweat drenched our bodies as we painfully undo Instructor Ryan's handiwork. It takes what feels like an hour, and we don't even think of moving when we're done. We just lie in the ice room, in our trunks and bare feet, semi-naked and shivering. The perspiration that coats our bodies rapidly freezes around us in the chilly air, making it even colder. As we lie there, I stare up at the huge light on the ceiling that illuminates the whole ice room. It reminds me of the moon. "You okay, bro?" Wedgie asks me verbally, sensing my melancholy through our link. I respond with a confirming noise. "Do you ever think of what is still outside? I mean, how does the world even look beyond this complex?" I grunt. "No idea, man. That ceiling light looks just like the moon. I miss being free." I would have said the word home, but Wedgie and I have known no other home. We have spent all of our lives in the military. What we need is freedom. It takes us hours before we finally pick ourselves up off the frosty ground and limp back to our bunks. It is already late in the afternoon, and the sun is already setting. Our joints ached all weekend. I think I'm discovering tendons and ligaments that I didn't even know existed. Wedgie and I have decided that enough is enough. We have to defeat Instructor Ryan. The dread and our persistent fear of Instructor Ryan, the shapeshifter, has started to get to us. I know Wedgie feels it too. But how do we beat a supernatural? Part 5. Damn. It's Thursday evening again. That means tomorrow is Friday, our least favorite day of the week. It's amazing what some simple old psychology can do to you. You know, Pavlov's experiment, the one where the bell rings and the dog salivates? Same goes for Wedgie and me, except Instructor Ryan finds new ways to torture us every Friday. Something strange is happening though, you know? I think we are recovering faster. Wedgie and I found that the aches and pains now fade faster on weekends. A couple days back, Wedgie accidentally scratched me quite deeply during one of our wrestling matches, but by the time our training session was over, the scratch had already disappeared. There wasn't even a mark where the injury had been. Another weird thing is that I think we are actually starting to get used to the cold in the ice room. In our last training session with Instructor Ryan, he'd ask us to sit back and chill, which involved him forcing Wedgie and I to interlock arms back to back and bury us to our necks in powdered snow, leaving us to dig ourselves out. But we didn't feel as cold as when training first started. These changes in us are rather unsettling, so we bring it up to Instructor Ryan one day. I think we need a doctor, we tell Instructor Ryan, expressing some concern about our health. Nonsense. It's all a part of the training. Instructor Ryan dismisses our concerns. His expression discerns us from asking more, and we have no recourse to any higher authority, so we kept our mouths shut. That said, we've been Googling the answers, and what we're going through is definitely not normal. What is happening to us? When will this all be over? Google, heck, even Reddit turns up nothing. We have so many questions, but so few answers. Truth be told, we are more than a little worried. Most of our fear that we experience on a daily basis comes from Instructor Ryan. We never know what his sadistic mind is thinking of next, but we have also started to question what we're doing in this camp. Rule number 4, your training will be for as long as you and your buddy need. Exactly what does this mean? It's been weeks now, and there's no end in sight, and we still haven't seen another person in this place. The whole training complex is still empty, and there hasn't been another soul. We start to doubt, what sort of weird military training is this? Not that we have time to care too much. Our training program is quite hectic, after all, but the seeds of doubt have been sowed, and we would be lying if we say they aren't growing. You know, having lived in this complex for over a month now, we quite miss the outside world. We miss going out to shop. We miss dining in cafes. There may be a weird telepathic magical bond thing between us, but that doesn't mean we are not human, right? It is now evening, and I am resting on my bunk bed, scrolling through my phone when I happened upon an old photo of ours, Wedgie and I, with our arms around each other's shoulders in high school. Buddies forever, the caption reads. I sigh, glancing over to Wedgie. He's lying on his bed, arms outstretched, trying to cool off on this hot summer evening. I think of something. I have an idea. Wedgie looks at me and shrugs. He reads my mind and knows what I'm thinking. Might work. Best get some sleep, Jungle. It's Friday tomorrow. Yeah, man. Screw Ryan, I responded. Wedgie responds with a sheepish smile. I turn out the light. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Friday. Another showdown between the boys and Ryan. Instructor Ryan announces to an empty ice room, flexing his muscular arms like a boxer before a match. Wedgie and I stand on the south end of the wrestling platform. At opposite corners, we watch Instructor Ryan carefully. He walks towards us calmly, as always, morphing into his octopus form as he does so. I feel a growing dread in the pit of our stomach. Even though Wedgie and I have seen this form of Instructor Ryan so many times. Get him, Wedgie, I urge. As Wedgie launches himself at Instructor Ryan, Instructor Ryan laughs. He easily sidesteps Wedgie. Wedgie lands on the other side of the platform. Your turn, Jungle. I sprint towards Instructor Ryan. Feinting with his right waist, he smirks and motions to block it. That proved to be a colossal blunder. I jabbed Instructor Ryan in his underarm with all of my might. Just as he showed me how to, Instructor Ryan stumbles backwards, clearly surprised. You dare use my own move against me, Jungle? Instructor Ryan whips me across the back with a tendril. I cry out in pain and fall onto the frosty ground. He uses 2 tendrils to hold my arms apart, and a 3rd tendril to lash me across my back. I scream in pain with each lash of the tendril. The wounds close rapidly, but each lash opens a fresh one. This is not going to end well. Instructor Ryan releases his grip on me suddenly and crashes to the ground. What the, he says. In a flash, Wedgie is on top of him, ripping his tendril out of his back. Angry welts appear where Instructor Ryan's tendrils once were. They glow black and red. Instructor Ryan hisses in pain, eyes widening in surprise. I jump onto Instructor Ryan's back now, getting rid of his tendrils, one by one. Instructor Ryan squirms below our knees, trying to transform, trying to escape. But it is too late for Instructor Ryan. He shrieks in pain with each rip. When we are done, Wedgie throws Instructor Ryan out of the ring and lets out a jubilant roar. Wedgie and I hug each other and clap each other on the back, and we leave the ring. But we still have one more thing to do. We walk over to where Instructor Ryan lies on the ground, or to be exact, where he should be lying. Instructor Ryan is gone, and in his place is a lady with long hair lying on the frost-covered ground. Wedgie and I exchange glances. She looks familiar. I place 2 fingers on her neck to check her pulse. She's motionless but alive. Naira. It hits me first, and I stumble back, shocked. Wedgie's eyes widen in shock a split second later, undoubtedly having registered what was happening through a telepathic link. Naira opens her eyes to see us staring at her. Surprised, she mumbled weakly. We are, but we have learned not to ask questions. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Wedgie winks at me. I am, Wedgie. I wink back. As I look up at the huge light in the center of the ice room. Let's go to the moon. Naira pales as she realizes what we intend to do. I command you release me, rule number 3, Naira shouts desperately. Well, you're not Instructor Ryan anymore, are you? I retort. Reggie and I laugh. Naira panics as she realizes she is running out of bargaining chips. Guys, please, Naira begs. I can answer all your questions. Oh, Wedgie says. Like how every question we ask is stupid? but we were curious, so we put her down. Alright, tell us everything then. Talk! Naira swallowed anxiously and started talking. Chief always knew I was a shapeshifter, and so he was afraid of me. As you may already know, people have always been afraid of things they don't know. Boss took me in that very night. Chief forced me from the orphanage. Hold on, I say. Who's Boss? Boss is one of the most powerful crime lords on this planet. You've never heard of her. She keeps a low profile. For decades, she's been spending huge sums of money, investigating the paranormal and building her own army. As part of those plans, she built this huge complex where we train. Boss has corrupted your military's top brass, and for years, we took in recruits from there to train. Boss preferred to take in people from orphanages. They have no families, so there would be fewer questions. But a few months ago, Boss started to lose control of her criminal empire. Apparently, she was stricken with poor health or something, and her partner in crime betrayed her too. She found out and prevailed, and last I heard, he was rotting away in some prison cell in the middle of nowhere. But her vast criminal enterprise had been compromised. A few months ago, all the existing arrangements were falling apart, so we stopped bringing in new recruits. You were the last two. Nobody wanted to train you, and all the other instructors left. Since everything here, food, cleaning, maintenance, is automatically carried out, I decided to take you under my wing. I wanted you to be the best soldiers I'd ever trained. You would be my magnum opus. And now, I think I've finally done it. Wedgie slaps Naira across the face. How dare you tell us this? Our training came at the price of our mental health. All those torturous trainings you put us through, how dare you say it was worth it? That's enough blabbering from you, you little witch. Jungle, let's do it. Wedgie nods at me, and we both know what to do. We hoist Naira up by her trunks as she wiggles in futile. We plant our feet firmly on her back, and we stretch her as far out as her arms allow. Let me tell you, a shapeshifter's arms can stretch, and then we release. We catapult Naira onto the ice room's ceiling light, leaving her to dangle by her arms from the rooftop, clad in only the trunks and the shoes that she wore as Instructor Ryan. Revenge is a dish best served cold, we called out, laughing, as we closed the door to the ice room behind us. We did not see Naira for the next 2 days, and we take this opportunity to wander through the complex in our own time. It's strange that there's no notice from the higher brass. Maybe Naira is right. Everyone is gone, just quiet. But we do not care. Finally, inner peace. We deserve that much. Oh, and if you're wondering, we think we know what becoming in tune with your own body means now. Wedgie and I seem to be able to keep cool or warm, regardless of the weather outside, and we've become much stronger, much faster, much more enhanced. Think Captain America without the stars and stripes and shield. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised to learn it exists at this point. After all that has happened, the one weird thing is that we don't seem to tolerate clothes anymore. We'd assumed that our training was now complete after defeating Instructor Ryan, and tried wearing normal clothes again. They itched so badly. We took everything off after a couple of minutes. It seems that the only thing we can now tolerate are shorts or swim trunks, like those we used in our training, but not shirts. Oh well. We are superhuman or supernatural, but clothes is our greatest nemesis, Wedgie asked incredulously. I laughed. I guess being supernatural is weird. Looks like this is going to be our new lives. I look at my frame in the mirror. Well, at least we both look good. When Naira appears, she limps into our room, timid and respectful. Gone was the arrogant prick she was as Instructor Ryan. Sirs, Naira stammers. There is someone who wants to meet you. A mysterious man gracefully sweeps into the room. His aura is one of danger. But these small things no longer faze us. We were victorious in our battle in Instructor Ryan / Naira, and we are indomitable. Besides, we sense that he means us no harm anyway. You broke the girl mentally and physically. She was already unstable in both senses of the word, due to the traumatic childhood, and what you did to her in the ice room seems to have broken her completely. She was lucky that I found her when I did, or else she might have died from hypothermia, or from starvation. Wedgie and I start to protest that we could hardly be blamed for what happened to Naira. The man holds up his hand. Despite our pride, his authority commands us to fall silent. We do, and let him speak. There is no need for you to explain what you've done. I know what happened, and to be honest, for what she did to you, she probably had it coming. Not that I'm a great arbiter of morals, for what it's worth. Knowing we weren't going to be held responsible for what happened to Naira, Wedgie and I heaved a sigh of relief. That assurance is enough for us. We do not ask how the man knows things, but our intuition tells us that he is not lying. After all, there are many strange things in this world, and we have learned to accept it. The man leans forward, offering us his hand. I am Zen Tang. Perhaps you have heard of me. I can sense your confusion. I think we should move to a safer and more comfortable place. But I thought I should tell you that your military has deserted you. Its leadership is in tatters, and nobody is coming for you. I'm glad to have finally found you. It took me a lot of effort. Come with me, and I'll show you a world more complex than which you have ever known. Are you ready, Jungle? I'm scared, Wedgie. Wedgie turns to look at me and gives me that classic cheeky grin of his. No, not just classic, reassuring. We'll be sitting on the world together, Wedgie says, quoting onward. Watching as the days turn into night. I responded affirmatively. And so we each grasp Zen's hand firmly and give it a good shake and turn. We are ready.